Yes.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone in the chamber here and anyone online or on call. And I want to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for the City of Cotati on Monday, May the 15th. May we have a roll call attendance, please?
Yes. Commissioner Long.
Here.
Commissioner Moffitt.
Here.
Commissioner Berman.
Here.
Vice Chair Gilardi.
Here.
Chair Savage.
Here. Thank you. So let's move forward to the first item of approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have any questions or comments on the minutes from that meeting? If I have a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes from the April 17th meeting.
All right, second.
I'll second that.
All right, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Moffitt. Aye. Commissioner Berman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gilardi.
Aye.
Chair Savage.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, next is changes to the agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to move item F1 to F2, so we hear item F2 first, since there's a number of people in the audience here for that subject.
All right. Does that need a second and a roll call, Noah?
As the chair, you can make the decision.
Okay, I support that decision, so we will flip the matters at hand. Next, we'll start with our oral and written communication, and this is the opportunity for people in the chamber to come forward to the microphone and have a chance to talk. We do ask you keep the comments to 3 minutes or less. If you have additional comments, those can be submitted in writing to either Noah House or to Carla here on the city staff, okay? I do have a letter that was received from the attendees with a signature, so we'll put that in our record. And also I have the forms that were filled out, so I'll start by calling the names of the folks that have filled out the form, and then anyone additional that wants to speak, they can do that after that. So we'll start with
Chair Savage, this section of the agenda is actually for items that are not already on the agenda.
Okay. Okay.
So if anybody has a comment on something not agendized today, they can speak.
Okay.
But if it's for matters at hand, we should wait till after the presentation.
Okay. All right. So this would be your opportunity for items that are not on the agenda. So if anyone has any comments. Okay, we'll move forward then. So for
Chair Savage, the Zoom, we have a couple of Zoom attendees.
okay.
All right, let's see. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Chair Savage, that'll end Zoom public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to matters at hand, and we'll start with the Cotati Village rezoning staff report.
Thank you, Chair Savage, members of the council. My name is J.P. Harries. I'm a senior planner with the City of Cotati, and let me just wait 1 minute while they pull up the PowerPoint.
I can't hear you. Can you speak into the microphone?
Yes, please, sorry. Thank you. So tonight we're talking about rezoning two particular parcels located at the northeast corner of Alder Avenue and Highway 116. This was the site of a former project called Cotati Village. This is a staff initiated rezoning tonight. And next slide, please. That's just an aerial view of it. You can see that it's largely vacant. There is the Cotati Cottages development is located just to the north of this site. Lowe's is just to the east of this site. And it's a vacant property. So this would rezone APNs 144-050-009 and 046-286-021 from Commercial Gravenstein Corridor PUD, Planned Unit Development, to Commercial Gravenstein Corridor. This was the original zoning. In 2007, it was changed to allow for a planned unit development that was proposed at that time. Next slide, please. This is kind of a busy plan, but it is the proposed PUD development. what you see in that plan are 46 residential units. They were small lot, detached, single-family residential units. There were a couple duets in there also that would have provided 6 units of affordable housing. And there were, to the south, there were 3 commercial buildings which were intended to be office retail, and there are roads that move throughout the development. The PUD is a planned unit development. It is both two things at one time. It's both a type or form of development that can occur, as well as a zoning that runs with the land. What it does is it allows you to mix uses and define development standards that you may not typically allow during a development. So it's a specific kind of a zoning, specific standards set up and approved through an ordinance by the city council that allows a project to move forward that may be outside of what might normally be permitted. And that's what was approved here back in 2007. Next slide, please. And the old village PUD, basically it defines the exact number and placement of commercial and residential units, the type and size of recreational facilities, the allowable lot coverage, the building heights that were permissible for the different uses. There were different yard setbacks defined for different uses there. It also defined the specific parking standards, the landscaping, energy resource efficiency requirements, street design standards, parking lot standards, and the allowable uses that could be there. So this was a very project-specific zoning. That project went away several years ago. The map that was associated, a tentative subdivision map that was associated, it expired. Design review approval expired. And the project proponent indicated that they no longer wish to pursue that particular project and is considering a different project, which which is not on the agenda tonight to discuss. It is a project that is currently under review by staff, and we're working with the applicant through the various issues, and that project will at some point be coming forward to the Planning Commission. So next slide, please. So if you look at the zoning map, this is the current zoning map. That orange is currently the Gravenstein corridor, the commercial Gravenstein corridor area. You'll see that these particular parcels are shown in orange because it's still within that district. It's just that it doesn't show the PUD overlay. So essentially what we're asking tonight is to remove that PUD overlay, that very specific project zoning, and restore it back to the orange or the commercial Gravenstein corridor zoning. This would basically allow a different type of project to come forward other than that old PUD. Right now, nothing else can be entertained with that particular zoning, with that PUD zoning on it. Next slide, please. Coupled with this is the city of Cotati's housing element. And when we brought this forward and submitted it to the state, we identified a number of sites that we identify that will help us to meet our RENA numbers. Our first submittal was rejected by HCD, which causes us to go back and add more elements to demonstrate our commitment to housing. And this was one of the sites that we identified and indicated that we would rezone this property back to its CG zoning in order to facilitate consideration of a project in the future on that site. Next slide, please. And then this was program 2.7, or 2-7, and it said that the city will rezone parcels for the Cotati Village project to remove the unused PD and facilitate a project on this site, the proposed project. And so this is a commitment we made within our housing element. Next slide, please. So we're just recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance rezoning the two APNs from CGPUD to CG. Now, I may want to take a moment to speak about the project. Like I said, we're still looking at the project. Staff has no position on this project right now. We're not making any kind of recommendation, nor are we trying to front run the decision on that by this action. This is simply to remove that PUD and restore the old CG zoning. Any project that's consistent with that zoning could come forward, and any project that does come forward would have to be consistent with that CG zoning. So with that, we'll close for comments and questions.
Do you have comments or questions from the commission?
If you could please, for the audience and people listening at home, can you explain how the regional housing assessment number is developed, and actually we don't come up with that number?
Yeah, actually, I think Noah, who worked quite extensively on that, can best to answer that.
Yeah, so the city of Cotati is part of the Bay Area, and as a part of that, we're part of a group called the Association of Bay Area Governments. That is essentially a regional planning group that sets the growth for the entire Bay Area. And as a part of that, they project how many housing units are going to be needed in each city in order to meet the growth that's anticipated. Cotati, as a part of our last housing element, was projected to need about 140 units approximately. And that as a part of this next 8-year cycle, we're anticipated to need around 250 units. As a way to get our housing element approved, which is the plan for how the city will meet that need for housing over the next 8 years, we have to show the state that we can accommodate a certain amount of development, not just the 250 units that the state sees as needed, but essentially to build a cushion beyond that 250 because projects often don't move forward. Not every site's going to come forward with development in that 8-year cycle. And so we, as a part of the housing element, had to demonstrate to the state that we could build the 200 or have the 250 units accommodated with an additional buffer of about 600 units.
Thank you.
And can you explain what happens if we don't meet those numbers as a city?
Yeah, so the state has been rapidly changing kind of the penalties associated with not complying with the arena. Historically, it was just a goal, it was a target, there weren't really penalties associated with it. Now, the penalty ranges have been you miss out on grant opportunities to fund infrastructure projects, all the way ranging to some states or cities have actually been sued by the state for not demonstrating effort to move forward to implement the arena. And in some instances, the state can actually use the courts to take over your development review process. Sorry, Senior Planner Harry's just reminded me, not meeting your arena also makes you subject to SB 35, which is a law that allows certain types of projects with affordable housing components to move straight to building permits. There is no public review, there is no public hearing. They are just simply allowed to pull a building permit to construct those projects.
And would that be the case even if there was a PUD in place?
It gets kind of nuanced, but they are allowed to ask for incentives and concessions to not follow the zoning standards in place, regardless of whether it's a PUD or a standard zoning district that the city has.
I'm sure I have questions, but I'd like to hear from the public and hear their concerns.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, then we'll move to public comment. And I have some forms that were filled out, so we'll go through those first. And let's start with Monica Goodall.
Hello. Thank you for helping this meeting and for the education. I really appreciate it. I purchased my home in the Cotati cottages back in 2007 when this PUD was, part of, and we have such a beautiful neighborhood, almost 50 homes, and we just would really love to see the plan unit development stay in place, or I would like to have it stay in place because I want to grow that community where kids can play and laugh and be safe and be able to, have a childhood that I grew up with. And if we change this to commercial only, are we going to just have more Lowe's and more, businesses there, or not a planned community that allows Cotati to be Cotati? I'm a Petaluma native, and I just love Cotati, and I love what you guys have done to maintain that small town community. And I totally understand you have to find ways to put people in and mix in some affordable housing, but I'm just asking if you could really consider keeping that planned unit development option, and maybe we can get creative and figure out something that works for everyone in the community. Thank you.
All right, next we have William Olmo.
Good evening. My name is William Olmo, and I live at 7832 Rivard Court in Cotati. All right, I reviewed the 2023 housing element, and there's absolutely no mention of this property changing to removing the PUD. But what it does state, section 2.4, changes in the state law, pages 5 and 6. The following items represent substantive change to state housing law since the city's last housing element was adopted and certified in 2015. The housing elements update has incorporated and addressed all pertinent housing laws and changes, such as affordable housing streamline approval process, Senate Bill 35, 2017, additional housing elements, site analysis requirements, Assembly Bill 1397, 2017. I'm going to skip the other 7 because I'm sure you've read them. One of the ones I noticed was called No Net Loss Zoning, Senate Bill 166, 2017. This proposed change will be a net loss of 42 PUD units. There's no other provision addressing where those 42 PUD elements are supposed to come from, so I think we have a problem with that. No net loss. All right. The city in their housing development, after all of these laws, they acting as a lead agency, I'm sorry, this is under conclusions, page 39. The city of Cotati acting as a lead agency determined that an addendum is the appropriate environment document under CEQA because the proposed project would not require revisions to the certified general plan EIR due to the involvement of new significant environmental effects or substantial increases in the severity of significant effects previously identified in the general plan EIR, yet there's 9 state laws that have changed materially and potentially can impact the housing on this one lot by increasing it by over 130 units over the PUD. But I wrote down this quote, projects often don't come to fruition. So this change right now changes the zoning unnecessarily. That could be considered at a later date when the plan is ready to come forward, and we will get an additional housing element, unknown how many that'll be right now. All right. And the 2023 out, I just wanted to say there was no mention of this particular plan. So this is the first change after the housing element plan that just got passed in 2023, unnecessarily.
All right, I'm sorry, but we're out of time. But if you have additional comments that you'd like to submit, please do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next we'll go to, I'm sorry, is it Mike Darks or Mike Parks? Parks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Commission members and other city staff. I have submitted a letter and a petition to the clerk as I came in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it really quick and then offer some additional supporting comments. We are the residents of the Cotati cottages located adjacent to these parcels and are strongly opposed to proposed zoning change from residential to commercial. The Planning Commission should not be the party to sponsor this change, which stands to greatly benefit the current property owner, a developer, which we have many years of experience with, at the expense of our environment, our community, and our residents' safety, including young children. No consideration has been made for the adverse environmental impacts this intensified use will dump upon our great city. The 2023 Housing Element Update did not evaluate or study all the environmental impacts caused by changing these parcels to high-density housing, including elements such as air quality, greenhouse gases, hydrology, and water quality, let alone public safety. The current residential designation is over 20 years old. The Cotati Cottages owners have invested in the community based on the future plan for 42 homes on these sites, as opposed to facilitating upwards of 177 apartments with dangerously insufficient parking, egress, and ingress. Given the city's proposed change will disproportionately affect us at the cottages, we respectfully request a no vote to this change. We saw up on the map that was proposed by the senior planner, all of that red is right next to us, all of it. While we are a neighbor to this property, we have been connected with this property. We were to be sister developments in PUD. We have property in common. We have parking issues, significant parking issues. Part of this development will remove 40 to 60% of our parking, which is already insufficient. There is a commercial development that just went in right across Alder Avenue that is already insufficiently equipped to handle parking. We recently experienced that at an event that they had where we had to stand guard at the front of our entrance so that their attendees would not park in our community. And that's only one of 3 of those slots in that commercial area that's been occupied. So we have way too much going on, way too little space, and to change that type of housing into a high density, which this zoning change cuts red tape so that you can build faster, so that you can bypass EIRs, so that you can get a high density RENA approved housing complex in here to satisfy the city's need. No question the demand is high for this, but to put it all on right over our fence and on our backs is completely irresponsible. So we encourage a no vote from you folks for this zoning change.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move to Vincent Newman.
Good evening. I'm also a resident at the Cotati Cottages. We bought in 2018, and we were sold the idea. The reason we bought in there was because of the planned unit development that was put in place. We were really excited about that. The commercial change that's coming up is a direct result from the Monahan Development Group proposing somewhere between 166 and 177 apartment building complex. It's right there on Gravenstein Highway. This is going to directly affect our lifestyle and our living situation. I just wanted to request a no vote on the zoning change. I bought into this place with the idea that it was going to be 42 single family homes, and now it's changing all of a sudden. So I request a no vote based on this is why I bought here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move to Nick Bucalato. Did I pronounce that correctly or incorrectly? Bucalato, sorry, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the council. My name is Nick Bucalato. I live at 7609 Eckmeyer Court. I moved in there with my wife in 2016, and just like pretty much all my neighbors, we were also kind of sold with the aspect of what the original plans were going to be. we're actually pretty excited about it because it was essentially an expansion of that of our neighborhood, and kind of gave a good-looking face to the 116 work-live spaces. So we're very supportive of it. I know the HOA board was very helpful with, advocating for it here at the Cotati Council. Parking is essentially already very limited. Many of, I think the 50 spots they proposed at the new plan are essentially already being used. And we figured that with the new 46 units of the original plan, it was probably going to be a little bit more difficult, but something that we'd be able to manage. However, with them advocating for 4 times as many people, and with some of the issues we've had just with events at like the Jane Dispensary, the area just isn't set up for that. It's also not set up for mass transit. So yeah, I encourage you to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Christopher Crin-Mora.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Crin-Mora. I'm the owner of 7833 Rivard Court, and I'm also the president of the Cotati Cottages HOA. We've had lots of meetings over this with the developer and without. The Alder Avenue couldn't handle the traffic, even with Jane and their event right now, unless there's some major improvements made. But adding an apartment complex adjacent to the cottages will just wipe out any parking that we have. They're proposing to take easements away right now that already say that we share parking, and we're still negotiating over that as it is. But to keep it a small town, and the community that we have over there will just be destroyed if an apartment building goes in next door. There's just too much traffic. I'm more concerned about 116 and pulling out. I go all the way around right now, but with the new Jane and everything, there's lots of people flying off of 116 to get in there, flying right back out. Traffic needs to be addressed over there. But on behalf of the HOA, you've heard most of the residents. I don't actually have to reiterate any of it. You guys have the documents there as well. But we request a no vote on the rezoning of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Howard, I'm sorry I'm not able to read your last name, but Howard.
I apologize. I was delinquent.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Howard Dalton, 7836 Rivard Court. Good to see everybody, and thanks for allowing us this few minutes. I'm here, obviously, as part of the homeowners of Cotati Cottages, and I just had a couple of questions. And one is, was there ever any considered different zoning classifications besides CG in addressing this property? And I'm very empathetic to your housing element. My background is over 40 years in banking. I've been chief credit officer. I've been a lender. I've been a president and CEO of a bank, and so I understand a lot of this housing element. But I wasn't aware of when the process was going on in the submissions to the state of California as to what you were going to be doing with the plan. That's maybe my ignorance, if it was published. But in that, I'm sure if you were to put it out, there's a lot of classifications that can be, that can replace our existing zoning. That doesn't have to be the runway that CG gives you. Okay, and I just want to point that out. And I know the pressures that the city faces. It's when I was in banking up until 2 years ago. A lot of cities are facing this housing element. But I sincerely think, and this isn't about the projects. I want to talk about the zoning. But if you do change the zoning, and it does go through, and I'm a believer that it will, they're going to try to continue it to put this project together. That's 71% of the 250 houses you're looking for over the next 8 years. And you have a number of other projects in process and getting ready to tee up that I think will go a long ways towards that 250. I think, again, in consideration of doing this, because where we live over there is very analogous in the early days of Windsor. You know, the west side of the freeway, for all of you that have been here, know full well they got the short end of the stick until finally somebody said enough's enough and let's develop that area in a way that makes sense. I'll leave that with that. But the other thing that we'll experience, and you can talk to most members of the appraisal institutes, the MAIs, when you drop a project like this next to the Cotati cottages, who's responsible for the diminishment in the values of our living units? Because it's going to happen. It's an automatic. And then I'm going to just wrap up and just remind you all that there are legal matters pending on this lot, okay, that we are pursuing, we are discussing with the developer, but it will change some of the technical aspects of, or the areas, the acreage of the parcel. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Adrian Lobby. Adrian Lobby, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to appreciate all the people that are here. It's so great, and I hope that some of you will get engaged in this whole process and show up at other things and get involved in other issues, because we need citizen participation, resident participation. For myself, I was late because I had planned to come for this item, but I thought it was second on the agenda. So I apologize, I missed some of the presentation. My niece is coming to Cotati. She just graduated from college, and I would love her to make a residency here. I'd love her to find a job and find an apartment. And so I said, well, you know, you can stay for a couple months with me and we'll see what happens. So I've been going through my papers and trying to make room in my paper-ridden house for one more person. Today, kind of coincidentally, I found folders on Cotati that address exactly this issue, where there was a desire to make a special zoning for this piece of property. And what I saw there was that there was a swimming pool and a park. And I've been driving by there for years going, is there a park? I don't think there's a park. And, you know, the West Side, that's one of the things that I think the West Side really needs is a park. So I'd be really interested to hear if that's part of the plan and if it's going to happen. Thanks.
Thank you.
And if you have a job for my niece, let me know.
All right, I've gone through the signed forms. Are there additional individuals who would like to come forward and speak? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jenny, and I'm just coming from a medical background, so a lot of this I don't fully understand. But what I do understand is I bought a townhouse in the Cotati Cottage in 2005. And so I've been around for a while, and the developer came and said, here's our plan. And of course, it's not official yet, but they were saying that we would be allowed parking in the apartment complex like 2 days a week between certain hours. It was like 8 hours. And the parking is an issue. It's not going to be resolved unless they reduce the amount of apartments. That's the bottom line. Unless they go back to a smaller amount, and he just mentioned that they solved several properties in Cotati. So why not deliver and spread the love of the need that we have among Cotati instead of just top-heavy everything into this little neighborhood that cannot supply the parking? That means that we cannot have any guests over. That, I mean, to say we can park 2 days a week in the apartment complex for a certain amount of hours doesn't allow us to have any guests, any family visit. I know that's been already reiterated, but that's where I'll leave that. But that just occurred to me when he mentioned that they saw multiple sites. So why all just in one spot? And yes, there's going to be other needs, but that's a top-heavy place for a tiny little space. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Yes.
My name's Elizabeth Forrester. We purchased property 18 years ago. We live at 8005 Star Court. And when we purchased the property, the developers showed us the plans of the property, and part of the plans of the property were tennis courts, swimming pools, a common area, a common park area, other things, other different kinds of security. In the end, they did not do any of that stuff. They fell through with absolutely everything. They had nothing to say about it. They had no, there was no reason behind it. They just fell through. They just didn't come up. Right now, we have a really safe neighborhood over there. The houses, the condos are worth about $650,000 each now. We pay a lot of taxes in that area. We have a safe neighborhood, and bringing in 150 units, some of them apartments, is going to bring down the value considerably. And I just wonder how much revenue will the city be getting off apartments compared to $650,000 townhouses. So I think safety is an issue. I don't think that that's been taken into consideration at all, the kind of crime that's going to be going on, the kind of transient population that's going to be going on. And they also told us that there would be 42 units, 42 individual houses that would be built on that property, which is another reason why we purchased there. So I don't think that they can be trusted to stick with whatever plan they suggest to begin with. But as it sits, the plan that they're offering takes part of the property away from the cottages, uses it for mutual parking, tells us that we can only be there 2 days a week or 3 days a week. They have not made any kind of allowances for what kind of traffic 150 units, including affordable housing, will bring to that area. So I would really appreciate it if the commission would make those considerations and vote no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to come forward and speak? All right, do we have anyone on the phone or Zoom?
Thank you, Chair Savage. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Okay, Chair Savage, that'll end public comment.
All right, thank you, Carla. Do we move then to commissioner comments, or does staff want to make any comments before we move into commissioner comments?
Staff's happy to answer any questions that arose from the public comment if the commission would like us to.
You have questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have a lot of questions. Thank you for coming, really. My first question is, the owner is listed as 116 Associated Investors, LLC. Who are they?
Tom Monahan is the developer who owns the property, I believe, the LLC.
So it's Monahan.
The
It's
same,
Monahan
the same
Pacific.
developer who built the adjacent properties. Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And on page 329, it says, the project proponent of the old village at Cotati Commons has indicated that they no longer wish to construct the project. Thus, the PUD zoning has no present value and prevents development of the property as envisioned in the general plan. I question that. That was a red flag for me, because the property does have value to me as a PUD. It seems to, and we can find somebody who wants to go along with what this was negotiated as. I feel like Monahan Pacific, Are they here? They're not with us today, are they? Here to make any comment or? Ah,
There is a couple, yeah.
okay. Okay. Well, I'm concerned because, like these folks said, you had promises. There were promises made to do certain things on the property. It was never done. I don't understand how I can trust what you say. And I went over there and drove by yesterday and looked at the adjacent property. You can't, it says you can't even turn left from your street to 116. You can only turn right. You've got commercial development that's available. I'm concerned about this changing over to CG. I'm concerned about it, and I'm listening to the residents who went ahead and bought your properties, their properties, with the thought that this was going to be what's next. This was going to be a lovely community that you were expecting. Now, I'm not saying that affordable housing and apartments aren't lovely community. We need to learn how to live with each other, no matter what. Absolutely, we need to open up housing and housing availability. It's clear that we have a housing shortage in this city and in California. However, there was a PUD put in place. Monaghan Pacific wanted that PUD in place. They got you to buy your properties based on this opportunity, and I feel like the whole rug was pulled out from under the community. And I'm concerned that staff, you're going ahead and saying, well, we don't have anything, we don't know anything, we're just going to go ahead and change it without, I mean, is there something? Is there a there there? They seem to think there's a there there. I mean, there's these apartments that are being talked about. Is it true? I don't know if it's true. So I would like some transparency, and I would like to feel like I'm here for the residents of Cotati. That's my responsibility as a planning commissioner, to be here for the residents of Cotati, not for a developer, and for them to make more money on this parcel. And so my heart is with the residents. That's where my heart is as a commissioner. That's why I came on board. I also want to be there for staff. I need transparency, absolutely. And this being thrown in as just turn it to CG, there's no problem here. Apparently there's a problem here. So that's my comment, and I reserve future. Thank you.
All right. Ryan, do you have anything?
So I'm just curious, this change is being brought by the city. There's the applicant on it. Could a developer request this change?
Yeah, a developer could request this change. As a part of the housing element process, this PD zoning that precludes any project other than the 43 single-family homes previously proposed was identified as an impediment to development of housing at the density that the city has identified as a minimum, which is 15 units per acre in this zoning district, or I'm sorry, in this part of town, which the CG zoning comes from the CG general plan designation of the property. It's actually the only zoning that you could implement the CG general plan designation with, other than a planned unit development, which is no longer allowed by the city. And so as a part of the housing element process, the city committed to removing that planned unit development zoning, which is identified as an impediment to housing development.
Any other comments?
So looking through this PUD that's currently here, it seems incredibly restrictive. I've I've lived through 2005 to 2008. I'm not surprised that a project that was developed in 2005 is no longer viable. On a personal note, it's disappointing to hear that affordable housing always brings crime or a decreased level of property values. I live next to affordable housing and I haven't experienced that. My question is, I understand the concerns and I think that they are incredibly valid. How much input do we as a planning commission have when the actual development plan is brought before us?
You would have, I guess, all the opportunity to make all the input that you want, as well as make recommendations to changes, conditions, if you wanted to approve the project. So the project right now, there is a project, to answer Shelley's question, that the city has received an application. There is on the website, if you go to the website, the City of Cotati website, under projects in progress, you can review the plans that we have, and the public can review the plans that we have, and we're open to receiving comments on those. So there is a project that's in. And I'm not sure if I answered your question. I mean, essentially, that you will have the ability to review the development proposal when it comes, once we work through the issues with the developer, with the project. And many of the issues that we have with the proposed project are the issues that you heard raised up today. We're very sensitive to what's being said tonight, and those are the discussions that we are presently having with the developer, very much the issues that you just heard. So.
And
Nice.
the only thing I would add is that the parking issues that are identified by the neighbors, there are easements on the parcel that talk about who has rights to what parking spaces, and some of the specifics identified by the community with regards to some of the existing rules about when they have access and when they can be utilized. Rezoning the parcel does not affect those existing easements, those established property rights, and those would live still on this parcel. And the developer would have to address those as a part of any future project, which would have to stand on its own merits.
Does rezoning this piece of property increase a developer's ability for ministerial review?
I don't.
That's a good question.
No, I don't think so, because any project of this nature has to come to this body for design review consideration, and design review is more than just, siding and colors and doorknobs. Our design review is a thorough site analysis that includes circulation and all the impacts that were discussed today, parking, and so no, I don't think you can move straight. This zoning would not allow you to just go straight to a ministerial approval. And I'm trying to think of a situation that could bring it, and I actually can't think of one where it would be possible, because this is an area that's actually outside of areas like SB 35, the Senate bill, which allows ministerial approvals. This particular area, because of where it's located, is outside of an area where it'd be allowed. And the reason it's not allowed there primarily is because of California tiger salamander. So you can't go to ministerial approvals where you have sensitive species in the area and stuff like that. So I can't envision a scenario where you could have ministerial approval on this property or any of the surrounding properties in that area.
Well, thank you for all coming here with your concerns. having been in the community for almost 40 years, I've seen a lot of developments proposed and then disappear in thin air. One of my issue with the development that you currently are living in is there should have been a requirement that the park was completed and not a promise in the future. And that falls on the shoulders of previous councils and planning commissions. I don't believe in that. To me, if this is going to be something that is part of a plan, it needs to be completed and not a promise in the future. So I'm sorry that, you know, the developer basically, here we're going to do this, but they didn't follow through. You know, as far as affordable housing, I mean, that's a huge issue. Didn't happen overnight. And all communities are trying to catch up. You know, it's tough because you don't want to be exclusionary and, you know, be a type of community that of the haves and have-nots. I do have to agree that, you know, I know a lot of people who live in low-income housing, and they're just like all of us, you know, and I really don't like when people assume or label people in low-income housing because they're just like us. They're trying to get ahead, trying to get a foothold, trying to develop a future for themselves and their families. And one of the things I think we're kind of, you know, I understand where you're coming from as far as the current zoning, and obviously that's not going to pencil out for any developers in the future, which is sad. A huge project, I don't know if I'm in favor of that because that's going to have some negative impacts also. There's traffic issues on 116 that the state controls that we don't control. There's a lot of moving parts, and until we actually see what a plan looks like and what's all detailed in it, we can't say, you know, well, this works and this doesn't work until we see what's proposed. I understand why there's the request for the change, you know, and I think it could be, if it's the proper project, could be a positive for everyone in the community. But until we actually see that project and can pick it apart and say, hey, this doesn't work, this is going to have too much impact, can we have more of a buffer between where the existing homes are, where the current homes are, how can things get realigned? Until we can pick that apart, we're not going to be able to make any decisions on whether it's good or bad. We need to actually see a plan, and that's where I am on it. I really think that, you know, we need to move forward, so whether it's Monahan or another developer comes forward with something, then we can say, okay, this is what you have to do. I don't know if any of you are aware, but when Lowe's first came in, there was a lot of people pushed back, didn't want it. And the city at the time, they put a lot of restrictions on Lowe's, and that building was built like no other Lowe's around. And then Lowe's realized some of these things that the city said you had to do was a positive thing, and they've incorporated it in their future developments. So until we actually can see a plan and pick it apart, I think that we're jumping the gun on criticizing a plan until we actually have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Vice Commissioner Gilardi. What you said resonated with me because until we have a plan, we don't have to change the zoning. Until we have something in front of me that I can actually see that is going to make the neighbors happy and everybody happy, I don't want to change the zoning because I don't trust the developer. He hasn't come through. He hasn't shown himself to be somebody who is accountable or has integrity to this community that's sitting before us. And I'm concerned about our residents. And I'm concerned that they be part of the process to make something else happen. If it's not going to be a PUD, then what is it going to be that is okay with everybody together making a decision?
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, staff, I'm sorry that I'm resident-minded. But I'm not sorry, because it is our town, and I love this town. And thank you for that, because we don't have to make a decision tonight, actually.
Well, I think though, like I stated, whether it's Monahan or someone else, if you want to attract a developer to that property to build some affordable housing, we need to do this change, and it's up to us. It's our responsibility to put the restrictions on any developer, whether it's Monahan or anyone else that comes forward, to say, this doesn't work for us. We need this, this, and this. But we have to actually make this change on this parcel. So, I mean, Monahan could walk away when we say, hey, you know what? We don't like any of this. This is what we want. We want a smaller development. We want additional parking. We want to make sure there's safeguards in there for the existing residents. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Ryan?
Yeah. So could you just clarify a little backstory on the property? It's been the same owner since 2007?
It's my understanding, and before, yes.
Before.
Yeah.
And so it's been 16 years since the PUD zoning was implemented, and they haven't been able to find any other use for the property? They haven't put forward any other applications or projects or anything since then?
Yeah, the previous approval expired, I think, in 2019, so the city extended it 2 different times to keep that project alive. When the project was approved, it included rezoning to the PUD, approval of the specific design of that project, and approval of a subdivision to subdivide the parcel for the homes that were included in the PUD zoning. City extended that approval 2 different times, and then after that, the 3rd time, the city was no longer able to extend it, and the developer indicated the project did not pencil with all the infrastructure improvements required. So they chose to let it expire.
Okay. Is there anything precluding them from, with their applications, requesting the zoning change at that time, like they did in the previous project?
There are some state laws that have been called into question regarding whether the city can force them to include that as a portion of their project, but there's nothing stopping them from including it.
Yeah, I find it difficult to believe that keeping a zoning specific tied to this property is going to attract in new developers if they were to walk away, because it's so specific. Seems restrictive. I sympathize with the residents that came here today and spoke before the council, and the concerns, the unknown going in there now compared to what's there, which is known. So it's a tough decision to make, and I'm hearing what the other commissioners, the comments they have made. It's a tough one, but I understand where you guys are coming from, wanting to change the zoning to match with the general plan, which allows different projects to come before us. At that time, we can analyze those projects, review those projects on their merits, instead of kind of getting ahead of ourselves at this point and allowing a restrictive zoning there that precludes even that next phase of the review process. So,
just for clarification then, in order for them to proceed with more detailed plans on the next proposal, the PUD needs to be lifted or rezoned?
Any project that's not that PUD would need to have a rezoning.
Before it can move into further stages of finalization and brought to us?
That's right.
So they can't wrap up a plan, bring it to us, and we negotiate what it's going to be, and then remove the PUD?
I don't want to say you couldn't do that, you could do that. But, I mean, this probably won't be the only property where we need to do this. There have old PUDs that we have on properties that had never been built, and we were in the effort of identifying those and removing them. There is a challenge, though, when you've identified things in your housing element to make rezoning a requirement of a developer, and that's where I think, is saying that the law is questionable right now because it hasn't been tested, as far as I know, in courts yet. But I mean, these are new laws that we're dealing with that says, you can't force the developer to rezone something that you've identified as like a housing opportunity site or a particular density, something like that.
On the commercial residential element, the density allowable in that, is that similar to other neighborhoods in the city, like Santero Way and places like that, or does that commercial designation along Gravenstein have a higher density by design?
It has some of our highest density of 15 units per acre. So it is, I think Santero Way is an equivalent density, if I'm correct on that. And it is one of the higher density zoned areas of the city.
But not higher than
I
others similar.
think it is important to point out, it does have that general commercial designation, but all of our commercial areas allow for mixed-use development. So that's why, and that's that most people want to build housing today as opposed to commercial retail and office, which is just not being sold today. And so any project that would come forward in CG and any of these surrounding properties would have to come forward, if it had a residential component, would have to come forward with a density of 15 units per acre.
And if the PUD isn't changed today, is anything that would stop it from being, if we would change our mind in 30 days and we would want to move it, is that allowable, or is there some type of time that has to transpire between a decision today and another decision? Or
No, you could make this decision today or in 30 days or 60 days.
Change your
Eventually,
mind.
there is a time when we have to do what we said we're doing in our housing element.
Yeah.
But I think we have some time, to do that. I think forgive me for being ignorant on the date, but I want to say it's probably sometime in 2024 where we have to make any kind of zoning change that we identified. I just don't know that date, but I know some I want to say July 1st, 2024, but I almost don't want to say anything because I don't want to say the wrong thing. But there is a date coming up where we do have to make the zoning changes that allow us to implement our housing element. And it's a thing that the city has to do. We can't force other people to do those type of changes.
I live on Santero Way, over there by the train station, and we have a similar situation. No tennis courts or swimming pools or ever, in our plans, but what was originally told us would be on those vacant lots when we purchased in 2005 didn't happen, and what's going to happen? You're concerned about that, and the current plan that the city approved maybe 2 years ago or so, and then had another revision to in the last 6 months. To be honest, weren't as desirable as what we were told, but it seemed like they had worked with the city to come up with something that was good and doable. So I feel that can be done when, as Shelley mentioned, the parties come together and, negotiate and work with the city and each other and get something that's going to be good for everybody. So I think that's possible, and I just feel that, if it wasn't quite this passionate of a topic and it was just more rezoning to move forward, I think that would be a little bit of a different situation. But I think I would have a hard time, moving forward with that change right now, considering, what we've heard today and questions and things that we still don't know about, what's next.
I think Monaghan Pacific has owned this land at least since the year 2000, and if they had had their way, we would have empty Nokia building sitting there. It would be totally empty. Well, it would possibly be empty. But, I mean, even the commercial space next to Jane is empty. So, I'm sorry, I don't trust this developer. I don't trust their word, and I'm concerned that, I mean, I need a blood oath or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, something from Harry Potter that they'd have to actually follow through, because they couldn't even do a park in this amount of time. And how much would that have cost? A park for the residents that you promised, and you didn't. Take it in that I believe there is a developer that wants to work with us. I believe it does exist. I believe it. I do. If it pencils out for everybody. But do they need to make so much money, or are they going to pack up and move to Las Vegas? I mean, like my ball team. I mean, come on. They've had the land. They continue to have the land. They haven't let go of the land. Obviously, they have some commitment to that. And they see something. They see dollar signs. And I think that our town is more than a dollar sign. We're a community of individuals. All individuals, from low income to prosperous, and who's to say who's prosperous? Because sometimes low income are happier people. So we need to find the happy inside us, and so does Monaghan Pacific needs to find the happy inside them and work together with the residents and with the city and find a way that's a happy collaboration. A blood oath.
Do we have any other comments from the commission?
I'm not saying that I trust the developer either, or that the plan seems like a good one. It seems very high density for your area. I think you do deserve a park. I love parks. My kids love parks. My dog loves parks. I like parks, right? But this change does not approve that development. And if Monaghan were to pull out and offer this land for sale, this change would make it more desirable. This change seems inevitable, whether we do it now or we do it by 2024 when the state mandates that we do this. I live across the way from a fresh development, and we got a lot more done by working with them and demanding changes that happen to that development than trying to stop it from happening at all. And I absolutely think that there could be changes that could happen to this proposed development. I haven't seen it, but I can pledge to take in everything that you've said when we are looking at it. But I think that this change, this development that's in the PUD is not going to be developed. It's just not. The concepts of PUDs surprise me in general for how specific they are. And thank you for taking my questions over the past couple days about why this PUD was in existence. I don't see a point in delaying an inevitable when it's hard to tell you that we're going to go against what we're doing, and I don't know if that's what everyone would do. I don't think that it should just simply be delayed to a vote that you're not here for, Because that's not open.
We'll be back.
Good. Good.
I'd love you guys to look up the history of the property because there's a lot. It's gone, changed ownership. They let it go to auction. They bought it back really cheap.
Used to be a hayfield. That got plowed every year.
But the current zoning is not going to get you your stuff either. That's my opinion.
If I could say, I think you need the proposed zoning. That allows commercial development of apartments that are classified into commercial ranges, if I'm correct. And given some of the new streamlined guidelines that have come down through the state, ABAC, et cetera, it allows a much more efficient process for the development. Now, some can debate that's good, some can debate that's bad. But I believe that's the case, at least according to the people I bank that build apartments. They need that commercial. They need the commercial zoning to get to the density also.
How do we, I'm sorry, how do we handle additional comments from the public?
Yeah, it's.
No, that's okay. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
so
new in this role, so I need some education.
We actually, I apologize. I really appreciate everyone's comments. Please contact JP and myself if you have anything. We're happy to meet with HOA representatives and all the community members, and even interested in holding a community meeting, neighborhood meeting, if you guys have a facility, or we can do it here to talk about the project. But actually, we cannot allow additional comments. It's totally understandable, and I appreciate everyone being really civil and respectful, but we have had threats of litigation due to differential treatment of folks, so we need to really keep a strict adherence to the 3-minute timeline.
No, I don't need an exact number, but roughly in the last 5 years, how many bills have come down from California that have changed and restricted everything a community does as far as planning and building?
Yeah, it's been an absolute onslaught. Frankly, some of you might have gone to some of the meetings we had starting in 2019, and I used a slide that literally said legislative frenzy on it with a group of sharks, because that's how it's been, and we as staff are just doing our best to try to keep up. And there has been some comments regarding changes in state law. Some of those changes in state law, as I alluded to, also preclude a city from using the base zone as the reason to not approve a project, housing project specifically. So it's a hodgepodge of laws. We will make sure that any project comes forward is reviewed on its own merits, meets all the requirements of the law. But we do believe that eliminating a redundant and essentially non-functional zoning district plan unit development in favor of just reverting to the base zone is an appropriate decision, and also in keeping with the commitments we've made to the state to try to remove governmental constraints to the development of housing. So the item before the commission this evening is a recommendation. The commission is not making a decision. They're making a recommendation to the city council, who will make the ultimate decision.
Because what we've seen in the past is it's more and more restrictive what the state is telling communities they can do. And what I've been hearing is that there's some bills out there right now to actually make things more restrictive, which to me is completely against a community having control of its own community. As far as the rezoning of this, it's up to us to tell a developer what we want, what we don't want. And if we make it so restrictive to Monahan, then their choice is to either to not develop or to sell the piece of property. But then we'll be able to get plans that we can look at, that we can say, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and how it is going to work with the current neighborhoods. And by changing the zoning of it, that's going to make that a possibility moving forward, and not tie our hands with some new legislation from the state that all of a sudden we're locked out of the decision making and you're going to have a 6-story building over there that none of us want.
Any additional comments?
No, I just want to say that I agree with the PUD being used as a restrictive zoning, not what it was intended for initially. And I think we need to get it back to what it was supposed to be so that we can start to see developments come through, and then that's when we will be engaged with the public and the residents on specific plans and understanding what they need and imposing those restrictions and those requests onto the developer at that time, and not trying to use a very specific zoning requirement at this time to lock that property to something that is untenable at this time. But, I mean, it sounds like once those plans do come forward, we'll have plenty of opportunity. I want to be very involved with the HOA, with the community in that area to make sure that we're understanding everything that is, that you guys are saying, and that we're able to ensure that those restrictions and those desires and concerns are being imposed on the developer so that we can actually start to work together to put something there that works for the community instead of just having it remain an empty field, which it has been for the last forever.
All right, do we have any additional comments? All right, do we have a motion on the resolution on page 345?
I move we approve the change of the rezoning of the 7.83 acres of vacant land from PUD to CG.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, do we have a roll call?
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Moffett?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman?
No.
Vice Chair Gilardi?
Aye.
Chair Savage?
No. Thank you. Are we getting ready to move on to the next item then? All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We appreciate it, and we'll be having more conversations around this, I'm sure. All right. The second item, the old first item, I'll turn that over to staff for their report.
Thank you, Chair Savage, members of the commission and public. Item F1, which was previously relocated to the second item under matters at hand, is a proposal to make changes to the downtown specific plan and other areas of the zoning code, essentially in response to a lot of the state laws that were alluded to in the previous item. I do want to point out and apologize for some of the formatting issues in the staff report. We use an agenda management software, and it does not work well with spreadsheets. And so getting them to fit well into that software and print in a essentially functional format is challenging. And then separate from that, the survey was administered by a consultant of ours, Four Leaf, who Brett McNulty is the lead staff on presenting that. But the time between getting that survey done and then me being able to access the data, I wasn't able to manipulate that data into as usable as a format as I would have appreciated, and also which is typical. So I do apologize for the awkward format of that. What you'll see is that we do believe that of the over 400 responses to the survey, probably about 250 were kind of automated responses, bot type responses, trying to get win the gift card that we used as a prize for people taking the survey. That was the first time that we had experienced that, and so the red responses are responses that we believe are bot generated, and the green responses were those that we believe were actually real responses. We do not have an ability to guarantee that's the case, but that's generally what we believe. And so staff took all of the what we believe are real responses from actual individuals and put those into a separate attachment, and those are included in the packet as without being attributed to any individuals, but staff felt like provided the most articulated answers. And so just see that, and we do apologize for the formatting issues, and we will improve on that. But with that, I will turn it over to Brett McNulty from Four Leaf the city's consultant who undertook to update the specific plan.
Okay, please let me know if you can hear what I'm saying. I want to be sure that the volume of the microphone is good.
We can hear you, Brett.
Okay, that's great. Good evening, Chair Savage, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for having me here to present the downtown specific plan amendments. As Noah mentioned, I'm with Four Leaf Incorporated, and I worked with Noah closely on the downtown specific plan update. We're going to be asking the Planning Commission to consider a recommendation that they adjust to this. If we could move to slide number 2, please. So what we're going to be asking the Planning Commission to consider is that they adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt an addendum to the EIR for the 2009 Downtown Specific Plan as an appropriate environmental document, and adopt a resolution approving the Downtown Specific Plan amendments and approve an ordinance amending Title 17 of the zoning ordinance land uses section to implement the downtown specific plan as amended. Okay, so we're going to move on to slide number 3, which summarizes the project description. Now, in tandem with the housing element, I just listened in on your debate about the rezone. In tandem with the housing element, again, the City Council had directed staff to update the downtown specific plan to make changes consistent with the state law, but most importantly is to retain as much as possible in light of all those changes, the city's vision for the downtown. The project proposes amendment that provides incentives for the inclusion of commercial land to be retained in mixed use projects inside the downtown specific plan. Now, to clarify, the focus of this project is to make minor changes to the land use regulations applicable to the downtown specific plan, and the vision for downtown is expressed. If you can move to the next slide, please. So back in January, the Planning Commission and City Council held a joint workshop on the downtown specific plan. The downtown specific plan was adopted in 2009 to replace the 1991 La Plaza specific plan that applies to a 60-acre area along Old Redwood Highway that starts at the south Henry Avenue and then goes all the way up to the Laguna de Santa Rosa at the city limits and adjacent to Brother Park. The downtown specific plan area is divided into 4 main districts. At the historic core, La Plaza, where the park is, the Northern Gateway, and Commerce Avenue. The plan itself took a lot of community involvement to bring forth a form-based code, prescribed design requirements for mixed-use downtown that used less focus on individual uses, but rather focused on retaining the visual impacts of buildings that would be consistent with the vision that was part of hard work that went into the plan itself. If we could go on to the next slide. So this map shows the downtown specific plan area with plaza that you're very familiar with this plan area. And I'd like to go ahead and skip on to the next slide, please. Okay, so as was discussed during the housing element update, and also discussed during the last item, there are a number of housing laws, 40 or more housing laws that were passed since 2017 that address planning and mostly housing focused efforts to overcome the state's as a whole, the housing issues that have been facing the state, including affordable housing, workforce housing, and the pressure that it's putting on a lot of communities in the state. The issues that have arisen for individual communities is how to fit all of these regulatory changes into areas of their town without impacting the overall vision for their cities. And to a certain extent, that has become extremely difficult. And I have worked with other communities around the state that have faced similar issues to the ones you're facing now, but unique to their cities. If we could move on to the next slide. As Noah mentioned, this graphic right here summarizes the changes to state law over the last few years and where they affect communities. And as you can see by this slide, it is an overwhelming and confusing number of regulatory items for small towns and a lot of towns to bring all together in one place and try to make sense of them and then reduce them down to policies and zoning regulations that will help cities comply with state law. If we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So as you are very well aware, and working on the 2023 housing element, the city worked hard to provide goals and policies and programs to improve and develop housing and to also preserve housing that's already affordable and in Cotati. The housing needs of all economic segments of the community, and I should stop right there and point out that one of the main goals of the downtown specific plan originally was to provide for the housing needs of all economic segments of the community. The housing element also identified adequate sites that were zoned and available during the housing element cycle, and then to bring these together and achieve certification and consistency with the general plan. And this was achieved through extensive outreach and workshop and hearings by the city. If we could go on to the next slide, please. Now, with the proposed downtown specific plan amendments and zoning amendments, what is being attempted here is to identify the exact acreage-based density in the downtown specific plan districts that is consistent with what was adopted in 2009. Also to refine the design requirements in the downtown specific plan to eliminate the confusing floor area ratio and refocus on form and lot coverage standards. And then, as I mentioned earlier, develop an incentive to support new housing and retain the downtown specific plan goals for commercial and mixed uses. And then ultimately to create zoning standards that would integrate into the existing zoning and still be consistent with state laws and retain the downtown specific plan as envisioned by the city with this update. Excuse me. If we can move on to the next slide, please. And so this slide is a summary of a proposed incentive that it kind of works differently than the incentives that you've been hearing about that always focused on housing. So the changes in housing laws that are coming in require that housing projects be allowed in commercial mixed-use zones. So what this requirement would do is, and excuse me, it's an incentive, but what it would do is it would work with the city's density bonus requirements, and it would incentivize returning public uses to residential developments in the downtown specific plan area. And how it would do that is it would allow an additional story of housing units above the 35-foot height limit, but the project proponent would agree to provide ground floor indoor community areas for the project, including administrative, shared work, meeting or exercise places, or in exchange for reduced community common areas being provided, that 50% of the project's ground floor street or plaza park frontages will include restaurant and or retail commercial uses, a mix of private shared area, commercial frontages, or public access outdoor space easements may also satisfy the requirements of the downtown specific plan objective residential guidelines and the open space requirements therein. And that it would require that the design is otherwise consistent with the downtown specific plan objective residential design guidelines. And so by taking a housing project and making it more consistent with the vision of mixed use in the downtown, and ensuring that public facing uses that are vibrant and that will support area businesses are retained in the project, consistent with that mixed use, the desired mixed use of the downtown. We could go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned previously, the city held a workshop with the Planning Commission and City Council, and the public engagement considered the project and to try to promote an understanding of the concepts being considered, gain input from the public, commission, and council, and I attended that meeting as well, and listened to the passionate comments of the city community. There is a survey and video available on the website and in social media, and then as Noah mentioned, English and Spanish surveys that were a little bit problematic, but there is a really good summary of the comments received in the Planning Commission packet. There's also the whiteboard video that's available on the link provided. So if we could, let's see, hang on a second here. I want to look my slides here. And if we could skip to slide number 14, please. Thank you. So at this time, I would recommend to you, Chair Savage, that you open up the hearing to the public to take questions, but I'll leave that to you, and that's the presentation at this time. I'm also here and available to answer questions for you, and also staff can be pulled in to answer questions as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Brett. That's very informative. Do we have questions or comments from the commissioners?
Brett, a question that I have, the change that we're looking at as far as the historic downtown area, a lot of those buildings tell the story of our community. How would this impact those buildings?
Chair Savage, Commissioner Gilardi, and please excuse me if I messed up your name, but hopefully I got that right. That's a very good question. The purpose of this project is to retain the character that's identified in the city's vision in the downtown. You see some of the, even on this last slide, the questions, these are desirable types of developments. Additional heights that come in for residential would go a little bit higher, adding another floor above 35 feet. But it would retain at the same time the ground level vibrancy or commercial support that was identified in the plan. And the residential design guidelines that the city carefully crafted for residential projects in the city would still be retained, as these amendments carefully address state law in consideration of the housing element and other state law changes to individually go into the downtown specific plan. And if you look at the number of changes that are proposed for the specific plan, they are fairly minimal, but they improve the ability to review projects. And a lot of your changes are coming into the land use section of Title 17 land use, the zoning section that kind of pinpoints changes that would be pulling in more specifics of these changes in state law and making them comport with the downtown specific plan. Relatively minor changes, but extremely important to retaining this plan was the intention of the city in making these changes. I hope that addresses your question, because at the same time you have existing uses that would rely upon the plan, the new uses in the plan to support their businesses and civic uses in town.
Yeah, my concern is, like I said, a number of those buildings, while they might not be hundreds of years old, they do tell a story of our community. And I would hate to see those buildings disappear to see a new structure built, and that will change the integrity of our downtown core.
And I understand. Yeah, go ahead.
As Vice Chair Gilardi, some of the ideas, especially behind the newer housing bonus for mixed-use development, is essentially to take incentives that already exist for pure residential projects that would be allowed in the downtown in certain circumstances, and include those for projects that add a commercial element. So try to maintain the intent of the plan, which is to have mixed-use development occur in the downtown.
Thank you.
What's the tallest building we have in Cotati right now? Do we know?
I am not sure of the exact tallest building we have in Cotati right now. The Village Walk homes are 3 stories, approximately 35 feet tall, and we have a hotel project that's approved that's approximately 57 feet tall, but is not yet constructed.
On the incentives, how were those put together?
Yeah, so right now, under certain state laws, folks can propose to go beyond the height limits that are allowed in the city's code, which is often 35 feet, but is in up to 55 feet in certain parts of town, Commerce Avenue, portion of the downtown specific plan. What we looked at were what is currently allowed for pure residential projects under these various state laws, what types of development kind of design could they propose under those, and how could we try to come up with ways to still incentivize the commercial elements in downtown. And so we looked at things like parking requirements, we looked at some of the uses that are in the land use tables and made some very slight changes to those, trying to reduce the process from like a use permit to a minor use permit in the instance of a community meeting facility, which essentially is a community center or a senior center. Multiple things could fall under that. But we came up with those ideas based on what we know about the state law and what could be allowed, the kind of desired uses that we've heard through the years meeting from the community, the results of the survey, which we had, over 100 validated responses telling us what they feel about downtown and where they'd like to see downtown go if it does develop or as properties develop. And then what we heard from the commission and city council and public in that January workshop. The one change is the additional housing bonus for mixed use incentive that we came up with since the workshop, but prior to this evening, as another idea to try to support getting some more commercial development in place of where these pure housing projects are currently allowed under some of these state laws.
Thank you.
Low barrier navigation center and supportive housing was in this. Where do you, first of all, in future, I would love if right up front we would know what that meant, right up front. If you could, just put into a parentheses, homeless shelter. It would have been great to know that that's what it was, because I didn't. So, so where do we envision one of those?
So the state has allowed low barrier navigation centers, which is a version of a homeless shelter, absolutely correct. And also, sorry, the other terminology, which is supportive housing. That is now allowed in certain multifamily housing districts and mixed-use districts everywhere in the city. So under current state law, that's an allowable use. The state has passed that law, and even if it's not in our zoning code, that's the rules, according to state law. I'm a firm believer in trying to have the adopted rules of the city reflect what can be done. It eliminates a lot of confusion. It eliminates a lot of arguing. It allows everyone to point to the adopted city rules and say, this is what is allowed and not allowed based on the rules of the city, versus trying to say, well, the state says we have to, even though our code isn't up to date. So this is essentially just bringing in that mandate from the state. So we use this opportunity because it is an ordinance, because it is a public process, and it does take a significant amount of effort to fold in those two land uses, which are in part of the proposal before the commission and will ultimately go to city council. That's correct.
If I may interject, and if we could go to slide number 4 on the PowerPoint presentation, if it's possible. The reason I wanted to bring this slide to your attention is it shows a mix of buildings, but mainly this depiction. These are from the downtown specific plan, and this is a 4-story building that would be consistent with the downtown specific plan, and conceivably a housing project that is at 4 stories could appear something such as this, with retaining the ground floor commercial and still fit into that design idea.
Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah, I need to address the survey. So, sorry. So a couple questions about the survey in particular. I understand that when somebody submits a survey that that information is public record. Is it very clear in the Survey Monkey, because even our residents are still seeing posts on Facebook that say, hey, $25 gift card, awesome, right? Clicking it, filling it out. Are they made very aware that their names, phone numbers, email addresses will all be published alongside their comments?
That was not explicitly listed in the survey.
I find that troubling. I don't know if y'all find that troubling, but I think that the protection of personal information here should be first and foremost in anything that we do with the public, and that includes informing them of it.
Yeah, I would like to address the survey as well. I don't think that that's very many answers to a survey, and I think that we're a small town, and I think there's a better way to engage with the public, and that is face-to-face, door-to-door. And I think that we could get together, a group of 10 folks, to hit the whole town in an afternoon, because I have, to put something on somebody's door and please request them to send back the survey or just deliver it to City Hall, because I think a lot of people were missed. People who don't have computers, folks at Charles Street Village, low-income seniors. I think a lot of folks were missed. Renters, people who are very busy commuting. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of folks were missed. And I think that we could engage with our residents so easily here and have a lot more community pride and involvement if we chose. And I'd be happy to put together a group of volunteers if you want to do another type of survey like this or outreach to the community, because people want to participate, I think. So, yeah, I found the survey troubling.
I'm always in favor of a both-and approach. And I know that there were public workshops held, and I see no problem with hitting the streets either. I'm not against surveys either. I think SurveyMonkey can be a fantastic tool. I might suggest something like Google Forms, where you get an Excel sheet that you can, manipulate a little bit better, but that's just my opinion. My problem really is solely based on the identifiable personal information and whether or not people were informed ahead of time that that would be published.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the survey as well. I agree that we should do everything we can to protect personal information, and going forward, that's something that at least should be stated so people are aware that they're going to be posted. Speaking from a background in public engagement, public outreach, I would actually say I am kind of surprised by the 66 respondents in a town of 6,000 people. It's not bad. And I would be open to exploring other ways to engage with the community, because I think there is probably a demographic that is missed when we're just relying on online surveys to get that engagement. Workshops can be effective, but if it's not a triggering subject, they tend to not be very well attended. Today, obviously, was very well attended, and I think it was because it was really important to people. So you can get kind of a mixed bag with those types of engagement. So I would agree that we would love to explore with the staff other ways to engage with the community, but based on what has been done, I think this is a pretty good representation. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. And there's definitely some very clear themes that you can pull from the survey. So if it was if there wasn't any really clear themes from it and there was only a few respondents, then I wouldn't have thought it was that effective. But based on the number of respondents and the themes, I think it's clear that people want more. They appreciate the walkability of the downtown area. They'd like to see that enhanced, that focused on. They appreciate the restaurants. People love the restaurants here, the local restaurants, but they also understand that there could be a more diverse range. So I think the incentives to mix in the residential and also mixed use to bring in some of those other uses that people want was a good thought by the staff. And I would just like to understand what we could do to promote a developer to invest in more pedestrian bike infrastructure. I noticed in the old plan it showed kind of the unification of La Plaza Park, which would be really exciting to see explore that a little more and understand what avenues, whether it's through grant funding, even a tax measure or something that could bring that, and you don't have those two major roads, East Cotati and Old Redwood, intersecting right in the middle, like the heart of downtown, and create kind of a more community space where you can hold events, you can build businesses around that to enhance that, and then start to connect the historic district with the northern downtown area. So if there's any way to get some more information on where that idea came from, it was just kind of more of a map in there, and I'm not sure what was behind that. I would appreciate that. And then see what we could do to incentivize developers to invest in creating, not just bringing in more commercial uses, but also enhancing the walkability and the bike access.
And as far as SurveyMonkey, I think that's a good tool. It replaced the old quick telephone surveys that they used to do, but maybe a combination of both. Because of my past experience, it's like people want to be involved, but they don't have time to be involved. And so you have to reach out in a lot of different ways to get their input. What I noticed is looking at the results of this, and I think it was in 2009 that they did the original. It was the same feeling. People were talking about the type of businesses, walkability, safe streets, a vibrant downtown, preservation of our small town feeling. So it's exciting to see that actual concept has carried over all these years, and that's something we need to continue with.
Anything else from commissioners? All right. Do we need to go back to public one more time? Or are we ready to? We do need to go back to public one more time. Okay. Do we have anyone Zoom or on phone?
Thank you, Chair Savage. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Chair Savage, that'll end Zoom public comment.
All right. Thank you, Carla. All right. Anything else from the commissioners? All right. Do we have a motion on the resolution on page 208?
Well, I'll make a motion. These long ones. And I think I've asked this before, Noah, but it's like, what's the reason behind not having a number now versus when it goes before the city council?
Yeah, we assign the resolutions after the vote. The resolution numbers after the vote. So then it becomes part of the formal record after it's decided. If it got continued, we wouldn't want to assign it a resolution number because they are sequential. So in case you continue it to a date uncertain, there's another resolution that comes at the next meeting.
That tags onto it. All right.
Wait one moment, please. Is there a way does the city have any land that it can donate to having a homeless shelter? Can we do this? Can we commit to doing this? I mean, is this an appropriate question right now?
Well, it's not on the agenda, so we actually can't discuss an item that's not on the agenda.
All right. Can we put something like that on the agenda?
Yes. I I think a housing element summary discussion would be an excellent opportunity to discuss all the housing issues that the city has essentially spent the last year and a half studying and analyzing and proposing programs to address.
Great, thank you.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Just real quick before we vote, is it possible to add any more language into this before it goes to the council?
Absolutely, yes. So one of the things that staff is looking for is not only just support or opposition or input on the proposed changes before the commission, but also any additional ideas or things to include in the recommendation to the city council.
Okay, because I'm inclined to vote yes on this. We don't have to go through the process again, but if there was a way to include incentivizations to developers to either reunify the park or create more like pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly throughout the city, throughout the downtown area. Right now, I know just crossing that street with my daughters in a stroller, crossing Old Redwood or East Cotati can be a little intimidating, especially for my wife when she's out there. So, I hate how those main roads go right through the heart of downtown. If there was a way to divert traffic around it, just to kind of explore some of those other options, that would be great.
And looking at this resolution, we talk about water. How do we know that we have enough water in building? How do we find that out?
So when the city goes through the general plan process, so we do that about every decade or so. The last one was adopted in 2015. We map out all of the, and when we did the 2009 downtown specific plan, we map out all of the, basically the scale and volume of development that we anticipate to come in the future years that plan is covered. And as a part of that, we evaluate, okay, if we anticipate this type of development occurring, how and do we have the amount of water to serve that amount of development? Do we have the sewer capacity to serve that development? Do we have the roadway capacity? So we study all of those issues. And then, obviously, we have to secure the general amount of water, which we get through the water agency. We buy water from them. They get it from the Russian River and Lake Sonoma. And then we also pump groundwater. We have a combination. Our sewage treatment is treated at the regional plant run by the city of Santa Rosa, but it's piped from Cotati out on Laguna Road. There's a regional sewer treatment plant out there. But then, as individual projects come forward, we have a water and wastewater consultant analyze those projects to make sure that they fit into the city's model for utilities. So we do big picture general assumptions based on the general plan numbers of residential units, amount of commercial square footage that we see happening over a period of time when we do general plans. And then when a specific project comes forward, we test those numbers and those assumptions by running that specific development through the model. And for example, when you see one of these larger projects come forward, you will see a sewer and water analysis and modeling of the potential impacts to the city's capacity.
Can you remind me the name of the tax that's added on yearly to help pay for the services that the cities put into new developments?
Not sure. So we have Measure S, which I think became
Measure M.
Measure M.
But then there's another tax, isn't there, that people who purchase a house in a brand new development have to pay yearly to help cover the extra cost of bringing utilities to that house?
So there's impact fees. This is correct. So yeah, so when a new home is built, and this gets to the utility question as well, when a new home is built or a new building, there's square footage based fees to cover the cost of providing the utilities to that building forever. So just as an example, this is part of the reason why development is so expensive in California is it costs about $70,000 for a new home just in impact fees to the city for us to be able to provide roads, sewer pipes, water pipes, housing, all those things through other mechanisms. So those are called impact fees.
Is the fee that communities pay for lighting and landscaping on city land, is that part of an impact fee as well, or is that a different type of fee?
So that's a different type of fee. So the city, because essentially cities are service providers, we struggle a bit to cover the cost of those services as they escalate with inflation and all those things. And so one of the other ways we've covered the cost of maintaining infrastructure like landscaping that's public, streetlights that are public, as new developments come in, we ask them to annex into a assessment to pay for the covering of that cost.
And do those assessments change, or they escalate, or how does it stay constant forever? Or?
It's generally a constant number, but with a inflation escalator.
Okay. And what's the process of reviewing those and seeing if they need to be increased?
So typically, it's almost never increased because any tax has to be voted. People have to vote to tax themselves.
Yeah.
And generally, most folks are adverse to paying more taxes. Okay. And so once a landscaping and lighting district or any kind of assessment district is created, it's very challenging to get increases in those assessments.
And the inflation escalator is just based off consumer price index every year? Or?
That's correct. There's different indexes that are utilized. Sometimes it's San Francisco Bay Area construction cost index, for example, but there's different ones, and they're baked into the document that approves it.
Does that fall under Department of Public Works or?
Landscaping and lighting districts do.
And the seeing what the fees are and everything, would that come under them, or would that be an accounting function?
If it's a city fee and a city assessment, generally the city calculates those.
Okay.
And
so we are.
I was just going to say, new home developments also. There's impact fees that go to schol districts that they put aside for improvements or possibly building new sites.
That's correct, yeah. Okay. So we have a motion on the table, and then there was a request for a friendly amendment, I believe, from Commissioner Long.
If I may, Commissioner Long, I would suggest to the planning commissioners that you could ask staff to come back with or take forward to the city council a recommendation that an incentive be added to implement the multimodal improvements in the downtown specific plan. This could include funding measures such as applying for grants from local and state agencies, including ABAG and Caltrans, and that these funds could be used to prepare an implementation plan for the downtown specific plan, pedestrian, bicycle, and safety improvements.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say this now or not, but I will. I support looking into the unification of the downtown park and the bike and safety and everything, but I feel adding it into here complicates this because I would want to know a lot more about that. So I'd rather we study that as it's standalone as opposed to putting it in here at this point, but that's just my opinion.
Would that bog down the process, or would it be better to have it as a separate discussion?
So one way to get to Commissioner Long's point, but maybe be a little bit less specific, would be just to add a element to the recommendation resolution that says the Commission encourages the Council to explore options to incentivize bike and pedestrian infrastructure to be constructed in the downtown. So it provides direction, but it leaves it general enough that then the Council could consider that.
Yeah,
does that work?
Is there another time when we could further explore the reunification of the plaza?
So the specific plan identifies the reunification of the plaza as a project. And so Public Works Department has started early analysis of what that would really take. And I do think they plan to bring that back probably next year. But we are starting to look at that. Because the plan says to do it. So the decision has already been made. Just the how is the challenging part.
So the resolution would be what's written here plus a sentence adding bike and pedestrian, as you just read.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Cotati adopting amendments for the 2009 Downtown Specific Plan and Title 17 Land Use of the Cotati Municipal Code to incorporate changes to the State of California housing law which necessitate revisions to allowable uses and other development criteria, file number PA22/14, including the suggestions regarding bicycle safety and bicycle paths.
I second that.
All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Moffett. Aye. Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gilardi,
Aye.
Chair Savage.
Aye. All right, thank you. So that completes our matters at hand. Do we have any reports by staff?
Thank you, Chair. Staff doesn't have any reports other than to just thank everyone for the new commission. This is my first time to be able to work with you all directly. Really appreciate the thoughtful commentary and the amount of effort that the commission put into reviewing this relatively large packet. We do anticipate having a meeting on June 5th, the next Planning Commission date, and we will be talking about bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure on the west side of town. There's a specific project that the city's considering, and we will be bringing that before the commission has a conceptual idea to get commission input.
All right. Do you have something, Shelley?
Yeah, I really had a hard time reading this packet, so I would request that it be legible. And I do read it, the paper. I don't have a computer, so I rely on the paper. And what was I going to say? Something really important.
We'll come back.
Was it about the comments being turned on when they printed the paper?
No.
I booked know about that earlier.
I forget. And if we're going to get a packet this big again, it was pretty daunting. And I would love it to be just a little more time to work with it. So that was the other thing. And a little course on how to pull it apart and read it would be great. Because, I mean, the green and the red, we just could have pulled that out and read the comments. So just some assistance, and I don't know how to ask real well. So, I mean, that's.
I'll reach out to you. We can chat.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any reports by the commission? No? I just want to thank staff for putting this meaty document together and all the work that goes into that. We appreciate that very much. All right, items received after the agenda. We did have a document that was sent out from Neil on the bike paths there around Cotati Village, and there were 3 specific questions. So are you guys able to address those for us now?
Yeah, sure. I can address it. They actually were related to the item that we heard previously, the Cotati Village rezoning, though we didn't seem to take any kind of position on the rezoning itself. One question was, actually, do you still have my PowerPoint? Yeah. There was a discrepancy, he felt like, with the property lines on the 2 parcels that we were talking about compared to what was in my staff report and what was in the ordinance that created the PUD. And if you just go down to, continue through the slides till I tell you to stop. I actually know where that came from, and I wanted to show it to you. Okay, one more. So stop. So this was the tentative map that was approved as part of the PUD. The tentative map is a subdivision map. And if you look up in the top right-hand corner, if you can see that very well. So the planner in 2007 essentially copied this map and then cut out that image at the top and use that as the description of what properties were being rezoned? And it's just, really, it's a location map. It's not an actual, it doesn't actually define the actual parcels.
Okay.
So that's, that was just a choice that the planner made in 2007, and that's why you see a discrepancy. There's also a discrepancy in the lot, in the acreage. I don't know if we just have better mapping abilities now, but you know, the acreage that is in my report is the acreage that is identified by the assessor as that acreage. It's what matches the parcel maps. But so we corrected that in the resolution. The other question he had was about directing the bike trail from West Cotati if it gets realigned up through the property, and I think this is a really excellent idea. It would be, at this point, a bike trail that goes to nowhere because it actually, our jurisdiction ends at the north end of that property, and we don't have the ability to influence what happens on the other side. However, it is within our sphere of influence. The expectation is that these properties would be annexed into the city at some time in the future, and it might provide an opportunity. So we're going to look at that, not just with the project on Cotati Village, that we're currently reviewing, but there's also a project next door we're calling it Redwood Row. That's the name they gave it. And we'll look at the possibility of incorporating something like that into both those projects. It's a good idea. And I forget what the
parklet being zoned as a park.
So that we can't rezone that as a park because it is a park that is, it's through an easement. It is parkland that is basically a private park that belongs to the Cotati Cottages people, as well as it will be shared by the folks with Redwood Row development, and which historically was going to be the marketplace for this big development area. So, so they all have, and Lowe's, all have rights to this park area. And there is supposed to be more park. It's just, it's been split into these different projects historically. But those easements are still there. The requirements to do that kind of stuff is still there. So, but those are private things. And we're not proposing to make that a public park at this point. Also because we don't want to own the road that would lead to that park. But it is a park already. But it is just part of that development, and it exists through easements.
So who would be responsible for developing that as a park, or when would that?
Well, it really basically functions as a dog park, you might say. It's just a field without any amenities in it at all. So it exists just like that right now. It's kind of open space. I don't know if you want to look at other amenities to that particular portion. I'd have to look at that's actually part of this particular project that we have in front of us, where we could look for more improvements there.
But we have to be cautious of what we discuss when things are not on the agenda. So this discussion will absolutely be a part of the future Cotati Village project.
For any projects that are coming before there.
All right.
Or Redwood Row, as JP mentioned, two adjacent development projects.
Yeah, there is more idea for green space there. Yeah, sure.
Okay. If we have nothing else, are we ready to move to adjournment? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
All right. Do we have a second?
I so second.
All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Noah, the letter from the HOA and stuff, do you need those? Okay.